The cameras were rolling in Studio A at Imageworks in Atlanta when a man named Dale Briggs leaned into his microphone between rounds and said, loud enough for the room to hear, "These people need to go back to wherever they came from." The Patel family, standing 14 feet away at their podium, did not flinch. Priya Patel, 62 years old, who had worked double shifts as a hospital housekeeper for 11 years so her children could attend college, who had sold her wedding jewelry in 2009 to pay for her son Raj's first semester, stood exactly where she was, with her hands folded and her expression unchanged. She had heard worse. She had learned a long time ago that flinching was a luxury she could not afford. Across the stage, Steve Harvey had already moved, not toward Dale Briggs, toward the microphone. He grabbed it off the podium with a speed that silenced the audience of 300 people in under 4 seconds. And what came next was not anger. What came next was a 2-minute lesson that television had never produced before and has not produced since. It was a Thursday in October, and the studio had been running warm and fast all morning. The Patel family had come from Columbus, Ohio. Priya, her son Raj, his wife Sunita, her daughter Mira, and Mira's husband David, who was not Indian, and who had fit into the family with such naturalness that Priya had once told Sunita she sometimes forgot which children she had given birth to. They had rehearsed for 3 weeks. Priya had bought a new sari, green and gold, and Raj had pressed his shirt twice, because the first time he did it he felt the crease wasn't right. They were the kind of family that laughed at themselves, finished each other's sentences, and had been known to win at Scrabble through what could only be described as coordinated aggression. The Briggs family, from Covington, Georgia, had been equally sharp through the first rounds. Dale Briggs, 68, was the patriarch, a retired foreman who wore a checked sport coat and spoke with the easy authority of a man who had not been told he was wrong in a long time. His family played well. There was nothing in the first 40 minutes that would have predicted what happened next. And then he said something that no one was prepared for. Between the third and fourth rounds, during the brief pause while producers reset the board, Dale Briggs leaned toward his microphone. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't intended to be. "These people need to go back to wherever they came from," he said. And he was looking at the Patel family when he said it. His own daughter touched his arm. He didn't look at her. The audience went quiet in a way it hadn't all episode. 300 people in a television studio produced absolute silence in the space of a breath. A woman in the 4th row covered her mouth. A man near the aisle half stood out of his seat. The two families stood 14 feet apart, and the distance between them had become a different kind of space entirely. Priya Patel looked at her son. Raj looked at his mother. And Priya did the thing she had done 10,000 times in 31 years in this country. She kept her face still, and she did not give the moment more weight than she had decided to give it. She had learned that particular stillness in 1993, her first month in America, when a woman in a Cincinnati parking lot had told her to go back to her own country. She had been 24 years old, holding groceries 1,000 miles from her own mother, and she had made a decision that day about what she was going to allow to break her. That decision had held for 31 years. It held now. Steve Harvey grabbed the mic. Not the host's mic, the production mic at the center of the stage. He grabbed it with one hand, and with the other he held up 2 fingers toward the floor manager, the specific signal that means stop the clock and do not restart it. A producer stepped forward. Steve did not look at him. "I've got this," he said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. He turned to the audience first, then to the cameras, then to Dale Briggs. He did not raise his voice. That was the thing that the clips 280 million viewers would comment on most, that Steve Harvey was completely, measurably calm. "I need 2 minutes," he said, "and I need everybody in this building to be quiet while I take them." He looked at Dale Briggs and he said, "I don't know you. I don't know your story. I'm not going to pretend I know what's in your heart right now. But I know what just came out of your mouth, and I know where we are, and I know whose house this is." He paused. "This show has been in this building for 23 years. You know how many families have stood on this stage? Thousands. You know what they all had in common? They believed that if they came to this country, or if they stayed in this country, and if they worked hard enough and loved their families enough and showed up enough, they had a shot. That's all anybody's asking for. A shot." He turned toward the Patel family, toward Priya specifically. He said, "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you something, if that's all right." Priya nodded. He said, "How long have you been in this country?" Priya said, 31 years. He said, "And in 31 years, what's the hardest thing you've done?" Priya was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she said, "Leaving my mother at the airport in Mumbai. She was sick. I didn't know if I would see her again. I turned around and I waved, and she waved back. And I walked through the gate, and I told myself that every sacrifice I made from that moment was for my children." She paused. "I did see her again, 2 more times. She passed in 2011. The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey set the mic down on the edge of the podium. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Dale Briggs and he said, in 8 words, "That woman just described the American dream." He wasn't done. "I'm going to tell you something about myself," Steve said, and he turned back to the audience and the cameras. "I slept in a 1976 Ford Tempo for 3 years. I showered in gas station bathrooms. I ate out of dumpsters behind restaurants on nights when I was too hungry to wait. And not one single time in 3 years did anybody come up to me and say, 'Steve, you belong here.' Not one time. You know who said it first?" He paused. "A Haitian woman named Celestine who ran a diner in Cleveland who gave me 2 free meals and told me God wasn't finished with me yet." He stopped. "An immigrant saved my life. Remember that." He turned to Dale Briggs a final time. He said, "I'm not throwing you out of this studio. I'm not canceling you or calling you a name or doing any of the things that feel satisfying in the moment, but don't change anything. What I'm going to do is ask you to sit with what you just heard. Because you just heard a woman describe leaving her dying mother at an airport to give her children a better life. And if that doesn't move something in you, then the problem isn't where the Patel family came from. The problem is somewhere else entirely." The audience was very still. And then something happened that Steve Harvey later said he did not expect. Dale Briggs' daughter, who was standing beside him, began to cry. Not from embarrassment, from something that looked like recognition. She put her hand on her father's arm, and this time he looked at her. And Dale Briggs, 68 years old, retired foreman from Covington, Georgia, said 3 words to the Patel family across 14 feet of studio floor, "I'm sorry." "Ma'am." Priya Patel nodded. It was not a performance. It was a woman who had decided what she was going to allow to break her, and who had made enough room in that decision for a moment of grace. Steve Harvey called his producers on stage and announced that both families would receive the full day's prize. He also announced, live on a taping day, with no prior approval from the network, that the Patel family would be invited back for a special episode in the following season. That episode became the most watched single episode in Family Feud history. When the clip aired 6 weeks later, it reached 280 million views in 10 days. 17 media outlets called it the most important 2 minutes in game show history. The hashtag #ThatWomanJustDescribedAmerica trended globally for 4 days. 3 months after the taping, Priya Patel received a letter from Dale Briggs. She read it to her family at dinner. Her son Raj said afterward that he did not know what his mother wrote back, because she had mailed the letter before telling anyone she'd written it. Priya said only that some conversations need to be private. A year after the taping, Raj Patel, inspired by his mother's 2-minute answer to Steve Harvey's question, wrote and published an essay called The Gate in Mumbai. It was about sacrifice, immigration, and the specific weight of a wave goodbye that you're not sure the other person can see. The essay was read aloud by a senator on the floor of the United States Congress. Today, Priya Patel is 72 years old. She retired from hospital housekeeping in 2024 after 31 years. Her retirement party was attended by 140 people, including 7 doctors whose scrubs she had washed when they were residents, and 1 woman from the airport in Columbus who had, 11 years ago, helped Priya with a heavy bag and told her she had a beautiful sari. She still has the green and gold sari from the taping. She wore it to Mira's promotion ceremony when Mira made partner at her law firm. She plans to wear it to Raj's daughter's graduation next spring. Steve Harvey, in an interview 14 months after the episode, said, "The moment that changed that taping wasn't what Dale said. It was what Priya didn't do. She didn't flinch. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I have never seen stillness like that. That woman knew exactly who she was. The rest of us just needed reminding." If this story about one family's dignity and the 2 minutes that reminded a room of 300 people what this country is supposed to mean moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to know that one act of grace can change the room. Have you ever watched someone hold their dignity in a moment that would have broken most people? Let us know in the comments. And ring that notification bell for more stories that restore your faith in humanity.